Hello, New Covenant Parish. Good to be with you today to look at a text from next Sunday's lectionary selections. And today we'll look at the Old Testament reading from 2 Kings 2, 1 through 12. We'll read the text as we begin. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went, and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. And when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet, if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Elijah is, without a doubt, one of the most memorable, unforgettable figures you'll find in the Hebrew Scriptures. He stands right alongside Moses in theological importance in Israel's history. His life is so full of divine power that the people think of him not just as an important figure from the past, but as a figure who can continue to carry their faith into the future. You see this discussed in Malachi, book of Malachi, chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, if you want to look at that. Now, the big mission going on in this story is the transfer of leadership from one generation to the next. And there's a lot of tension and anxiety in the story over this. Elijah, the older leader, has shown a tremendous amount of power and authority in his leadership. But how is this going to come to Elisha? Or will it ever come to Elisha? And this is the story of how it's transferred. In verses 1 through 8, the story shows the close connection between Elijah and Elisha. And you can sure see coming through loud and clear how devoted Elisha is to his master. The main dialogue in this story is between them. And 3 times the master commands the disciple to stay behind, and 3 times the disciple doesn't do it. Every time Elijah tells him to stay put, Elisha says, "I'll not leave you." And the word here means abandon. The word leave means abandon. It sounds like Elisha is worried about being abandoned himself when Elijah leaves him, which is one reason he clings so closely to the old prophet. The story moves from Bethel to Jericho to the Jordan, every step taking them deeper into the wilderness. The wilderness plays just a big part in many Bible stories because it represents a place that's untamed and not as much in control by human beings. And God loves to do amazing things in wilderness places. And certainly one of them happens in this story. You can see towards the end of the story that Elisha knows he's going to lose his master. And he's doing everything he can to put off the departure. But we know the time is getting close when the two of them cross the Jordan on dry ground. And the way this is done is meant to connect the scene to the Exodus from Egypt. There were big miracles there, and there are going to be big miracles here too. And this leads us to the final goodbye scene in verses 9 through 12. Elijah must see how anxious and fearful Elisha is over his departure. So in effect, he asks him, is there anything I can give you to make you feel better, reassure you? And Elisha immediately asks for something he knows he needs the most if he's going to continue his master's work. And it's interesting, he doesn't ask for any kind of material object that he could carry or put on to signify power and authority. Instead, he asks for a double share of Elijah's spirit. Now, that would be no little gift, and they both know it. Because when you look back at the stories of Elijah, you see a man whose life is filled with God's Spirit. Just a dangerous, undomesticated power and authority. God's Spirit working through the prophet gave him the power to do incredible things. The stories about him, if you want to look them up, begin in 1 Kings 17. And if you get a chance, go back and read some of them. In chapter 17, we see him bringing a young man back from the dead. In chapter 21, he opposes kings and he tears down wicked power structures in the land. In chapters 18 and 19, he confronts idolatry in the land to show forth the power of Israel's God. And in God's power, he does all this with no thought at all of personal reward or glory or advancement. The name Elijah means the Lord is my God. And no one who met him doubted that for a moment. Elisha sure didn't. And to Elisha's request to be given the power to carry on Elijah's ministry for the Lord, he told him that God's Spirit was not his to assign or guarantee. The most he could do was to offer Elisha a chance to receive it and a test that would tell whether or not it had been received. And then in verse 11, Elijah is taken in one of the most unforgettable scenes you'll see described in the Bible. Elijah is taken away by God's heavenly attendants in a chariot of fire by way of a whirlwind, if you can imagine that. The same word used for the storm the Lord spoke to Job out of. It's a sign telling us that what just happened can't be explained. It can only be accepted as a sign of the power and the glory of God. Elijah cries out, sad, having to face the abandonment that he wanted to avoid, and he tears his clothes in grief over the loss. But when the story tells us that he watched until he could no longer see him, that tells us that Elisha had seen Elijah depart, which was the test for being granted twice Elijah's spirit. And just a little bit beyond our reading, we see Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, and that fulfills what happened in 1 Kings 19:19, when Elijah threw his cloak around Elisha and designated him to be his successor. So now, that's happened right here. And the power of God, so evident in Elijah, would now keep working through Elisha, fighting against idolatry and doing miracles for the benefit of many needy people in the nation of Israel. And these prophets, they're just a wonderful part of our faith heritage, of the righteousness and grace working together to show forth God's glory. Good to be with you today, my friends. See you next time.